There's a curious paradox you've probably noticed. People who don't think too deeply often seem happier than those who constantly analyze everything. You see them in your family, among coworkers, in everyday life. They laugh easily, enjoy simple pleasures, and rarely appear burdened by existential concerns. Meanwhile, highly intelligent people, the ones who read, reflect, and question, often find themselves restless, anxious, even melancholic. Why is that? Shouldn't greater knowledge bring greater happiness? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most radical thinkers of the 19th century, gave us a disturbing answer. He argued that the sharper your consciousness, the heavier your burden. Because with every layer of awareness, you strip away illusions. You begin to see not just the beauty of life, but also its futility, its transience, its inevitable suffering. Ignorance, in contrast, acts like a protective veil. It filters reality, softens the edges, and shields us from the darker truths. The less you question, the easier it is to enjoy the surface of things. As Schopenhauer put it, the bliss of the ignorant isn't a flaw, it's a natural defense. Think of a dinner with friends. The so-called simple mind enjoys the food, laughs at the jokes, and goes home content. The intellectual, however, might notice the fleeting nature of it all. The wine is just chemicals tricking the brain into euphoria. The friendship could dissolve tomorrow. Life itself is slipping away second by second. Where one person delights, the other despairs. Schopenhauer insisted this isn't mere pessimism, it's logic. The more clearly you see, the less comfort illusions can give you. Ignorance allows joy by hiding the abyss. Intelligence reveals the abyss and demands that you look into it. This is where the human tragedy begins. We crave truth, but truth rarely makes us happy. The naive live easily but shallowly. The thinkers live deeply but painfully. So here's the central question we'll explore in this video. If intelligence condemns us to suffer, should we envy the ignorant? Should we deliberately blind ourselves to live more comfortably? Or is there another path, a way to carry the weight of awareness without being crushed by it? Schopenhauer himself didn't glorify stupidity. He didn't tell us to run from knowledge, but he believed we must face the cost of awareness honestly. When you know more, you suffer more. Yet, paradoxically, that suffering may be the only road to a deeper kind of freedom. The real challenge is this: how do we live with open eyes, without collapsing under what we see? How do we reconcile truth with peace of mind? In the upcoming parts, we'll follow Schopenhauer's trail. We'll see why naive people often appear happier, why intelligence feels like a curse, and how, through a radical shift of perspective, Schopenhauer thought we could liberate ourselves from endless striving. So if you've ever felt like your own mind is your enemy, that too much thinking steals your joy, stay with me, because that's exactly what we're about to unpack. Why ignorance seems blissful, why intelligence feels torturous, and how Schopenhauer believed we can break free. Schopenhauer believed that those who think less often live more happily. But why? The answer isn't complicated. In fact, it's painfully obvious once you see it. Most people move through life inside a kind of dream. They take the world at face value. Work gives them structure, family provides belonging, small pleasures create meaning. They don't dig beneath the surface. They don't ask too many questions. And because of that, they rarely confront the deeper contradictions of existence. But the person who sees more, the one with sharper intelligence, notices the cracks. They see that work is often just a form of compulsion, that pleasure fades almost as soon as it's tasted, that even love and friendship are fragile, vulnerable to time, to misunderstanding, to death. They realize that every joy is paired with loss, and once you see that, it's hard to unsee it. Ignorance then acts as a filter. It spares you from seeing too much. The naive can laugh without being haunted by the awareness that the laughter will end. They can fall in love without obsessing over the inevitable pain of separation. They can live in the present not because they are wise, but because they are blind. Schopenhauer compared this to the life of animals. An animal suffers, yes, but only in the moment. It feels pain when it is hurt, hunger when it is empty, but it doesn't carry the burden of foreknowledge. It doesn't anticipate death, doesn't torment itself with meaninglessness. The human, in contrast, suffers twice, once in reality and once in expectation. That is why, for Schopenhauer, intelligence is a double-edged sword. It reveals the structure of life, but that very clarity robs us of easy joy. The brighter the light, the sharper the shadows. So, should we then wish to be ignorant? Should we intentionally dull our awareness? Schopenhauer would shake his head. Because once you've seen, you can't unsee. Consciousness is irreversible. If you've glimpsed the abyss, no amount of distraction can fully cover it up. This is the point where many people turn to escape. Endless entertainment, consumerism, busyness, they keep themselves occupied to avoid confronting what they know deep down. But Schopenhauer thought that this constant running only deepens the trap. If you never stop to face the truth, you never gain freedom from it. Now, before we go further, let me pause for a moment. If these kinds of ideas resonate with you, if you're drawn to deep philosophy and psychology, not just shallow self-help, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. That way you won't miss the next parts of this series, where we'll explore not only why intelligence makes us suffer, but also how we can turn that suffering into strength. Your support means this conversation can continue and reach more people who need it. Back to Schopenhauer. He understood that superficiality keeps people content, but also enslaved. The naive man may laugh, but he doesn't realize he's a puppet pulled by desire and circumstance. He doesn't notice that every fleeting joy is part of a cycle. Craving, satisfaction, boredom, craving again. The thinker suffers more, but he also sees more. And in that seeing lies a possibility. Because once you realize the cycle, you might finally begin to step outside of it. You might discover a freedom that doesn't depend on illusions. That, for Schopenhauer, was the promise hidden inside suffering. If you face it honestly, it can transform you. In the next part, we'll go deeper into this paradox. We'll explore why knowledge and suffering are two sides of the same coin, and why Schopenhauer believed that this very suffering is the doorway to a more authentic life. Reading Schopenhauer, you quickly realize he isn't trying to comfort you. He isn't here to offer quick fixes or sugar-coated optimism. His philosophy is raw, almost brutal in its honesty, and one of his central claims is this: the more you know, the more you suffer. But why does knowledge so often feel like a curse? Because knowledge is the act of tearing away illusions. A child lives in a magical world. Things seem permanent, secure, and filled with wonder. But as we grow older, the veil begins to lift. We learn that everything is temporary, that every joy fades, that loss and death are inevitable. And once that truth sinks in, innocence is gone forever. For Schopenhauer, this isn't just a sad accident, it's the very structure of life. At the root of existence, he said, is what he called the will to life, a blind, restless force that drives all creatures to survive, to strive, to desire. This will is never satisfied. The moment one craving is fulfilled, another takes its place. The ordinary person doesn't notice this clearly. He eats when he's hungry, he enjoys, he suffers, but he doesn't reflect. For him, this endless chase just feels normal. The intelligent person, however, sees the pattern. He notices that every moment of satisfaction is just a pause between two waves of craving. He sees that pleasure is only the absence of pain, and that boredom rushes in as soon as the excitement fades. He sees the hamster wheel for what it is, and that awareness is heavy. Take an example. Imagine you've planned a vacation for months. The anticipation builds, your mind paints a picture of joy. You finally arrive, and for a few days, it's bliss. But even in the middle of your enjoyment, you can't help but feel it slipping away. You know it will end, that the memories will fade, that life will soon return to its routine. That knowledge creeps in and quietly erodes the joy. Animals, Schopenhauer points out, don't carry this burden. They suffer when hungry, rejoice when full, and that's the end of it. Humans suffer twice, once in reality and once in anticipation. We torture ourselves with foresight, with imagination, with awareness. So, does this mean intelligence is a curse? In one sense, yes. To see clearly is to lose the comfort of illusions. But Schopenhauer doesn't stop there. He also suggests that this suffering, as painful as it is, can be the beginning of liberation. Because only the one who recognizes the trap can even attempt to escape it. The naive are bound by the will, blind to its chains. But the sufferer who understands the cycle has the chance to step outside it. This doesn't mean he stops feeling desire or pain, but it means he can begin to loosen their grip. He can start to live with a different relationship to them, not as their slave, but as their observer. In this sense, suffering and knowledge are not just linked. Suffering is the price of wisdom. You pay for clarity with pain, but in return, you gain the possibility of freedom. Most people, Schopenhauer says, run from this truth. They drown themselves in noise, in distraction, in endless pursuit of novelty. But that only deepens their captivity. The harder path, to look directly at life's absurdity, is also the only path to real peace. In the next part, we'll look at Schopenhauer's proposed escape. If life is fueled by the restless will, and knowledge shows us the futility of chasing satisfaction, what's left? Schopenhauer calls it the denial of the will, a radical shift in how we live, and perhaps the only way to find lasting freedom. So far, we've seen Schopenhauer's dark diagnosis. Life is driven by an endless cycle of desire and frustration. The less you think, the easier it is to stay content. But the more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to enjoy anything without the shadow of suffering. That sounds bleak, but Schopenhauer didn't stop there. He asked, is there a way to live without being enslaved by the will? Can we find peace, even knowing how empty the chase really is? His answer was as radical as it was difficult: the denial of the will. Now, what exactly does that mean? It doesn't mean hating life or despising existence. It means changing our relationship to desire itself. Instead of obeying every craving, every urge, every I must, we learn to step back. We stop taking the will so seriously. Think of life as a theater. Normally you're on stage, acting, struggling, chasing. You feel every emotion as if it's life or death. Schopenhauer's advice is, step off the stage, sit in the audience, watch the play unfold without believing that every line, every scene defines you. The moment you gain that distance, the will loses some of its grip. For Schopenhauer, this detachment wasn't just a personal trick. He saw it as the highest form of wisdom, mirrored in traditions from the East, in Buddhism's release from craving, in Hinduism's ascetic practices, in mystical traditions that preached renunciation. Across cultures, he saw the same truth. Freedom begins when we stop serving desire. There are different ways to approach this. One is through art and beauty. When we lose ourselves in music, in painting, in literature, something remarkable happens. For a brief time, we forget ourselves. We're not craving, not calculating, not wanting. We simply behold. Schopenhauer called this aesthetic experience a glimpse of liberation, a rehearsal for what life could be if the will were quiet. Another path is through ascetic discipline, not in the sense of punishing ourselves, but in simplifying life, in choosing less over more. By voluntarily limiting desire, consuming less, needing less, chasing less, we weaken the will's hold. The fewer hooks the world has in us, the freer we become. Imagine this in everyday terms. You crave recognition at work. Every compliment lifts you up. Every criticism cuts you down. You're a puppet of approval. Schopenhauer would say, recognize this for what it is, the will demanding validation. Step back, see it as part of the play. If you stop letting your identity hinge on it, you gain a freedom no praise or insult can take away. Or think of consumer culture. We're constantly told we need more, the next gadget, the next trip, the next upgrade. But every purchase only fuels the cycle. Schopenhauer's denial of the will invites us to pause. Do I really need this? Or is this just desire pretending to be necessity? Each time we say no, we weaken the will's chains. This isn't easy. Schopenhauer admitted it goes against our very nature. That's why he called it a struggle against nature itself. But in that struggle lies dignity. It's a rebellion against being nothing more than a machine of craving. The point is not to erase all desire. That's impossible while we live. The point is to see desire clearly, to stop being its slave, to laugh when the will shouts more and calmly reply, not today. In that space, Schopenhauer believed, lies a new kind of peace. Not the shallow joy of ignorance, but the deep stillness of freedom. In the final part, we'll bring it all together. We'll see how Schopenhauer's philosophy can apply to our modern world, filled with distractions and endless craving, and why true happiness, if it exists, may be less about pleasure and more about liberation. We've journeyed through Schopenhauer's unsettling vision of life, the endless cycle of desire, the blindness of ignorance, the burden of intelligence, and the possibility of breaking free through the denial of the will. But what does all of this mean for us today, in a world that seems designed to keep us constantly craving? The truth is, our modern world magnifies exactly the problem Schopenhauer diagnosed 2 centuries ago. Advertising, social media, consumer culture, all of them thrive on keeping the will restless. Every notification says, you're missing something. Every ad whispers, you need this to be complete. Every comparison with others screams, you are not enough yet. And so we run toward the next purchase, the next achievement, the next distraction, but the wheel never stops. The satisfaction is brief, the hunger returns, and the cycle begins again. Schopenhauer's challenge is as relevant now as ever. What if the problem isn't the world, but our relationship to it? What if the real freedom doesn't come from getting more, but from wanting less? Think of how this might look in daily life. Instead of chasing every trend, you pause and ask, do I actually need this, or is this just desire playing another trick on me? Instead of being consumed by jealousy over someone else's success, you step back and recognize, that's just the will comparing and competing. I don't have to play along. Even something as simple as learning to sit in silence, without reaching for your phone, without seeking stimulation, becomes an act of rebellion. You're refusing to let the will dictate your every move. This doesn't mean becoming cold or joyless. Schopenhauer wasn't advocating despair. He was pointing toward a deeper kind of happiness, one that isn't built on constant craving, but on freedom from craving. It's the difference between the shallow happiness of distraction and the quiet strength of inner peace. Yes, ignorance can feel blissful, but it's fragile. It depends on not seeing. True freedom, Schopenhauer insists, is stronger. It's the ability to see clearly, to know that life is fleeting, that desires are endless, that suffering is real, and still find peace by refusing to be enslaved. That kind of peace is rare. It requires discipline, honesty, and the courage to go against the grain of society. But imagine the power of it, to live in a world designed to manipulate your desires and yet not be manipulated, to enjoy beauty, connection, and experience, not as possessions to cling to, but as moments to witness. When you live that way, something changes. The endless noise of the will fades, the comparisons lose their grip, the cycle of craving slows down, and in its place, you discover a freedom that can't be bought, sold, or taken away. That, Schopenhauer believed, is the closest thing to true happiness a human being can find, not the happiness of ignorance, but the freedom of awareness. So now I want to hear from you. Where in your life do you notice the will pulling you hardest? Is it in relationships, success, possessions? And how do you respond? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else wrestling with the same struggles. And if this exploration resonated with you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Every comment, every like, every subscription helps this community grow and keeps these deeper conversations alive. Thank you for watching, and remember, real freedom begins not when you conquer the world, but when you no longer need to.